It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. The body of Nigeria's former president, Muhammadu Buhari, was earlier this week laid to rest in his hometown of Daura in Katsina State. It was a state burial which was attended by dignitaries from around the world. The former head of state was buried in accordance with military and Islamic rites. Arise correspondent Benga Ashiru chronicles the final journey of the late president.
Like the force of time that eventually humbles all, former President Muhammadu Buhari has now taken his place in living memory as the seventh Nigerian head of state to depart the world. His body arrived in Nigeria 2 days after his death in London, following a brief illness. The news of his passing plunged the nation into mourning as President Bola Tinubu ordered flags flown at half-mast. A high-level delegation was also dispatched to London to condole the Buhari family and make arrangements for the return of the late leader's body. The federal government declared a week of national mourning, and Tuesday was observed as a public holiday in his honor, as tributes continue to pour in from across the globe. In an elaborate ceremony, a presidential delegation led by the president himself, alongside global dignitaries, converged on the Umaru Yar'Adua International Airport to receive Buhari's body under tight security. From there, a solemn procession began as the body was conveyed to Daura, about 90 kilometers from Katsina, his ancestral home. Amidst gun salutes, military honors, and a crowd eager for a final glimpse, Buhari's casket was received with pomp and ceremony, a mark of respect for a man considered a disciplined leader and statesman. The burial, held in accordance with Islamic customs, was attended by family, friends, political associates, and citizens who came to pay their last respects. Muhammadu Buhari is remembered for his austere lifestyle, anti-corruption crusade, and infrastructure-driven policies. His military rule, 1983 to 1985, and civilian presidency, 2015 to 2023, shaped decades of Nigeria's political and economic discourse. His legacies, both as a military dictator and a democratically elected leader, will remain a subject of debate, reflection, and historical inquiry for generations to come. Benga Ashiru, Arise News.
What a befitting report there by Benga Ashiru. And we have in the studio with us here, Kachi Ofia.
Yes. Of course, that entire story for me, this entire week, I think what really stood out was that picture of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, where he was bowing, to late former President Muhammadu Buhari. And that conversation has been had extensively about the significance of what that meant. This was not just about honoring a patriot, a statesman, a leader. This was about honoring a friend. And it just really, really stood out to me and really touched my heart in several ways, to be very honest. Also, the simplicity of the burial as well. Of course, this was in alignment with the Islamic rites, as would normally see, but they still found a way to make sure that he was honored in every sense of the word. And, he will definitely be missed, not just as a leader, but as someone who truly stood for the heart of Nigerians.
Right, that captures it well, Kachi, and from what Benga read, of course, that also very much captured, what the entire country had gone through all of last week, given the passage of a former, not just a former president, but the immediate past president. I think that the government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu did very well in according him a state burial, in putting all the necessary things in place in far away if we're saying from Lagos, Katsina, the home state of the late former president. Like any president or any statesman who passed on, views will be, of course, divergent, chief of which will be those who think that, passing on abroad, basically sort of highlights one of the big issues, not just of the country, but precisely the issues, part of the issues that he ought to have dealt with, in not having a suitable hospital that could look after his health. You recall in 2023 when Arise had a forum for all the presidential candidates. I think it was only the APC candidate then, who is now the president, that was not present. That issue cropped up, and I recall that I think it was Atiku who said that though, if he became the president, he would still have to use foreign institutions, health institutions, if it became necessary. That it's a matter of health, and that's what we have also been hearing from people who were close to Buhari, who said that he needed to be alive first and foremost before he could be taxed about being a patriot and using local things. I found that not very complimentary, because at the end of the day, he passed on, where the argument was that the facilities were better. Maybe it will just be more honorable, even though I get the point that it isn't just about the facilities here and expertise that is available here. That is the problem with our leaders going abroad for their health, checkup and treatment. Maybe it also has to do with the issue of privacy, so that their health records are not given out to opposition and weaponized, politically. That's that's a peculiarly African narrative, which we really shouldn't encourage. But what do we have? The last president of the country that passed on, while in office, passed on abroad on health issues. The immediate past president of the country passed on abroad, barely 2 years after he left office. We do not have control over when somebody moves on in life, but of course at 82, we know that he did his best, and he gave his best to Nigeria. Nobody will give anybody 100% mark. There are areas where Buhari did well, but there are areas where there were challenges, and challenges because even those who have succeeded him, point at the fact that things were not quite rosy, when they took over, even though they are of the same party. But as I said, the issue of health thing is still part of the challenges that we are experiencing, even with the current president, and you can ask people not to comment when it comes to things like that.
I saw a picture earlier this week. My friend Bezel was on the train, and I feel encapsulates the whole of the Buhari experience. He was on the train going, I believe, from Abuja to Kaduna, and he took a picture of the window, and on the window there were bullet holes. And when I think about Buhari's legacy, we talk about Buhari, who gave us this infrastructure, the beautiful trains, the railway lines. We talk about the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and we have to give him, credit for that. But we also have to think about what Buhari meant to Nigerians, and not just Nigerians now, but also in the past. This is a man who truncated our democracy in 83 and came back riding on the back of so much public goodwill. There was a lot of hope. Lots of people said Sai Buhari. They expected a lot from Muhammadu Buhari when he came back as a civilian president. And then he came and he nearly cut our GDP per capita in half. We went from single-digit inflation to 22% by the time he left office. Even child malnutrition in the north went up to over 60%. We have people living in multi-dimensional poverty across Nigeria. And when I've been looking at the conversations happening around Buhari recently, and there seems to be some sort of deification, it seems nobody wants to speak the truth because of politics. One thing we talk about is that his burial was dignified, and he lived a very dignified life. And I think a lot of Nigerians hold on to that. We used to say, my Gaskia, I believe is what they used to say.
Gaskia.
Yes, because, we hold on to that life that Buhari lived as a man who seemed very disciplined, he very humble. And we look at that and we compare it to those who come on news stations and talk about their Rolls Royce or how rich their father was or was not. And we know that we want to go, sometimes, Nigerians look with gleaming eyes at the time of Buhari, at the time of I had one shoe or I had one watch. People who felt that working hard and being dignified and being humble was something to be proud of, versus a lot of what we're seeing these days. And so I understand why Buhari comes with a lot of nostalgia for people, and he meant a lot to a lot of people. But I also think that, maybe it's the 12 million votes that some of these politicians are aiming for in the 2027 elections, because the case king is dead, but the king lives on, right? No, there's no apparent heir to his votes or to his supporters in the north. And so it seems there's been some sort of deification or trying to turn Buhari into a saint. And this is the same man who was the leader and the head of state when the Zaria massacre happened. And this is the same man who allowed the cancer of kidnapping and banditry to metastasize across Nigeria, so that we don't even know anywhere that's safe or not safe anymore. And so, we're going to talk about Buhari's legacy with Professor Usman later. As you said, it was a very dignified burial. It was he lived a simple life. He lived a humble life. But at the end of the day, we have to think about what this humility actually means to the Nigerians that he was in charge of twice.
Well, it was quite a week to forget in the recent annals of Nigeria following the death also of the Awujale of Ijebu land, Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetona, at the age of 91. He has been buried during a solemn ceremony at his private residence in Ijebu Ode, Ogun State. The burial ceremony was attended by dignitaries including Ogun State Governor Prince Dapo Abiodun, Africa's richest man Aliko Dangote, royal family members, and members of the Ijebu Traditional Council. Oba Adetona, who reigned for 65 years, is widely considered Nigeria's longest-serving traditional ruler, and as his death marks both the end of an era and the beginning of a new normal for Ijebu land. Of course, Arise correspondent Adifemi Akinsonye reports.
After 91 years of life, 65 of them dedicated to royal service, Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetona made his final journey home. At his private residence on Ibeba Road, Ijebu Ode, Ogun State, his body was surrounded by the beaded staff of Ijebu kings, and before the crowd of well-wishers, prayers were showered over him. It was then his body was carried into his mausoleum, where his father was already buried decades before. A flurry of recognizable faces joined his children at the gravesite for the final burial rites and Islamic prayers. As he was lowered into the ground, so too did the tears of his nearest and dearest.
There's not much to say. KBSC came into this world fully prepared, fight his good cause, and conquer. There's not much to say. He will be much more happier wherever he is. He didn't struggle, he didn't suffer. He just lived peacefully.
Following the burial, hundreds of well-wishers, including members of the Ijebu Traditional Council, state and federal politicians, and Africa's richest man, sat for a heartwarming series of eulogies. Ogun State Governor Prince Dapo Abiodun delivered a moving speech in the Yoruba language, describing his anguish when, already in London, attending to the death of former President Muhammadu Buhari, he received the news of the Awujale's departure.
KBC was a great man. You heard my speech. He was a man like very few. And God doesn't make them like that, many of them. He was very courageous. He was someone who was very forthright. He was a man of impeccable integrity and character. And he was someone who was he embraced his religion, Islam, but his level of religious tolerance was unparalleled. And that is why his reign has been so peaceful. He was a giver. He was a philanthropist. He believed in good governance. A KBC that went and established an institute of governance. I'm still to see any individual establish such an institution. I want to thank President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for all he has done for KBC, bestowing on him that national award of Grand Commander of the Order of Niger, adopting that institution and turning it into a branch of NIPS, and being true to friendship, because he's like a son to Kabiyesi.
Well, it means a lot because, Kabiyesi was my father, and I was really very close to him. I always drive down to come and visit him, and, that's the only thing that I think I can do to honor him. He was a great person, great leader, and also a unifier in Nigeria. So, it is upon us to all respect him, pay him the last respect, and we pray the Almighty God to bless his soul and give him Al-Jannah Firdaus.
Representing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a delegation of ministers led by Adeboye Oyetola also paid tribute.
I commiserate to the people, group people of the state. Baba was a legend. Baba was very courageous. Baba believed in the unity of the Yoruba race and Nigeria in particular. So my prayer is for God to give the family fortitude to go to the Lord.
But speaking specifically here in Ogun State, where the paramount ruler of Ijebu land, the Awujale himself, late Oba Sikirade Tono, is just going to meet his ancestors. I think it's a big vacuum from various angles. A whole lot of us that are seated here were probably not even alive when he ascended that throne about 65 years ago. So he's had a record that I doubt if in modern day any other person could have kept that record. To have been on a throne of kingship for almost 65 years, I think it speaks a whole lot, to his person, to the dynasty, and to the people that he has tended over.
My prayer is that Almighty Allah will guide his family, especially his family, his widows and his children, the fortitude to bear his irreparable loss, to help the people of Ijebu stare through this, and pray that God also helps us restore another pair of steady hands for this community.
The Ijebu Traditional Council ordered major markets closed on Monday as a sign of respect and an example of the mourning across the land for the immediate future. Despite the current vacuum, there is a succession plan in place. The next Awujale must emerge from the Fusengua ruling house. Whoever the next Awujale is, the overwhelming consensus is that the transition must be peaceful.
There is a structure. There is a body called the Kingmakers that has been put down. It's a statutory. Nobody can fight to be part of it. It's all set. So that the Kingmakers are the people going to now ensure that they do the right thing. The Fusembua family is very large. And that's where we're going to have some problem to be able to pick somebody. They have about 300 families congealed into one family. So we hope that they'll be able to pick out a few people for the Kingmakers to look at. And I'm sure they will. There will be criteria that will be used.
A bridge builder who championed the cause of peace for the entire Yoruba race and Nigeria is gone. We're praying to God to forgive them, receive them into the paradise, because that's where they belong. You see, the future is ahead of all of us. It is our duty to sit back, but that's not the moment for now. That future, leave the future to take care of itself after today.
We can't find another Oba Sikirade Tono. They're 65 years, and he and I, we talk every night, every day in the last 40 years. I will miss him.
Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetono lived for nearly a century, and despite their grief, his family and the people of the kingdom take solace in the comfort of knowing they are left behind by a king who left his kingdom far greater than how he found it. Adefemi Akinsoya, Arise News, Ijebu Ode.
The late Oba Adetono, of course, we know he became king at just 26 years old. This is all the way in 1960. At the recent Ojide Oba Festival, he was also notably absent. Of course, now we understand even more clearly that this must have been due to several health issues that he must have been dealing with at the time. But he was a man who was deeply respected, most recently getting the highest national honor from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2024 at his 90th birthday, the Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger. Now, I think for me, lots of people will then begin to ask the main question, which is who will be the next leader, you know, who will be the next Awujale, exactly. And like it was said, there are 4 different families, if I'm not mistaken, that it rotates through. So there's a family that has been selected. But I mean, between 1960 and now, it's a really, really long time. And a lot of generations have sprung up in this new family. But we know there are also 13 kingmakers. And this selection is backed by, it's legally backed, you know, it's backed by law. There's a process as to how it's done. So I imagine the hardest part will be selecting the candidates that will go to the ODs and then that will go to the kingmakers at the end of the day. But I'm sure that they will eventually figure out how that process would work to make sure that it's as seamless as possible, and whoever is coming in can reign and leave a lasting legacy like we saw Oba Adetona do for 65 years. I think that alone puts an age limit on whoever is going to come up. No, I mean, it's just an assumption. I'm not saying it's a fact. But I mean, if he started when he was 26, you know, and he ruled as long as he did, I mean, putting someone who's 50 at this time or 65.
We'll leave that for the...
No, of course, they will figure it out themselves, but that's just my thoughts on this.
I think the first thing we need to do is to extend our condolences to Adesua, who is half Ijebu, by the way. Yes. You know, Obaku, you know, a king transits, but then the king is still there. And so that's the beauty of it. If a king moves on at 91, for me, it's a celebration of life, and for Basikiru Kayode Adetona, it indeed is a celebration of life. And I like, you know, what the Ogun State government did, what the federal government did, you know, sending representation, even though people would probably have expected, you know, the president, Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to be there. But of course, given the fact that 2 friends passed on, you know,
on the same day,
on the same day, actually,
same day,
you know, Buhari and Obasikiru Adetona. But I think it's important to correct part of what we said when we said that he was the longest reigning monarch. He wasn't. He had just one senior who was there 1 year before him, and that's Oba James Adelusi Aladesuru II. Who is the Onigede of Igede Ekiti. He's been reigning for 66 years. He got there, ascended the throne of his forefathers on June the 26th, 1959, a year before Basikiru Adetona. So he's still, the Onigede of Igede Ekiti is still the longest, you know, reigning monarch in Nigeria. But you know how it is with the Ijebus. You know, we will see who the next king will be. We know, of course, that it ought to come from the Fasembua family, just like Chief Kuku said, you know, there. And I like the fact that even our own K1, the ultimate, was there and was interviewed, the Olori Omoba, Akile Jebu. A lot of people have been saying that, oh, will he be K1? We know that K1 is from Fidipote family. I don't think that it is their turn. But even the turn of the Fasembua, like Chipuku said, it's a huge, big family. If we go through the, I think it's the Gazette, you know, for how a king will emerge, there's a concept there that Chipuku didn't talk about. I'm sure that, you know, it's part of what led Oba Adetona, you know, onto the throne at that time. That you have to be an Abidagba. An Abidagba is somebody who has to be a true, you know, with a royal blood, somebody who was given back to by, you know, a reigning king at some point. You know, and part of what they wanted at that time was that they wanted somebody with education, you know, and an Abidagba, and they went for him at 26, came back, you know, from the UK, you know, to ascend the throne as probably the most eligible bachelor in the whole of Ijebuland at that time. We know that he got married while on the throne, and if anybody had read his autobiography, you know, excerpts are circulating from that beautifully written book. You know, everything that you needed to know about Awujale, you find it there, including, you know, his position and sometimes encounters with tradition as a gentleman and a Muslim,
Yes.
who ascended the throne. And we see the sort of controversy that is going on now, that why will he be buried as a Muslim? Once you accept to be an Oba, you become a cultural man, and you have to transit culturally, not through church or not through mosque. He predicted all these things, even when he was going to get married, and they say, oh, you can't marry this, you can't do that, and sometimes, two women from the same family kind of a thing. He explained himself, and this is an interesting thing for me, that a king will have his autobiography written, while he was there, not given to speculations after he must have passed. Our condolences to the entire Ijebu nation, and we believe, of course, that the new Awujale will soon emerge.
Yes, I don't know how soon it will be, but it will
soon is relative.
One thing I would say is that it was as an Ijebu girl. I'm both Ijebu and Benin. I don't know how you people manage me over here, but it gives you dignity to have such a dignified leader. And the Awujale, he encompassed so much, and it's not surprising that there was so much, chatter about him bearing as a Muslim and having a Muslim ceremony, because from the beginning he was always seen as somebody who was taking us to the future. He was always seen as a sort of change, a sort of educated man. At the age of 26, he was a living bridge to our history. He's not just a king. And it's so, life is such an interesting thing, because when Olabisi Onabanjo, the former governor then, wanted to exile him in 1983, the person who saved him really was Buhari. Because Buhari, did the coup on the 31st of December 1983. Yeah. That was just 48 hours before his exile and his removal was supposed to go into effect. And it's so beautiful. I was watching Adefemi earlier in the week speaking about the Awujale on this same table, and she spoke about that's part of why her sister's name is Adeshewa, is because the king outlived the governor, right? He survived that, and that's also the foundation of his friendship with Buhari, and it also showed that he's somebody who, as long as he lived, he tried to not be partisan. He held the stool in high regard. He showed the importance of having a leader, and a traditional leader who believes in the value and the dignity of the office he holds, of the people that he's leading and also serving. He took Regbe forward. He took Ojude Oba forward. He took the Ijebu people forward. He took us from independence till date. He had his tussles, whether it's with Obasanjo or whether it's with Onabanjo, but he rose above all. And I think, it's like when we spoke about Dantata, when we lose individuals like this, it's like losing a part of our history. They're living bridges to our history. And I think, and one thing I will say that I truly appreciate is that he wrote his autobiography, as he said. And I think more and more of our leaders need to do this.
Write and document their
they
stories.
Really need to. It's so important for us and for future generations, because we can't know where we're going if we don't know where we came from.
Correct.
Well, the new political coalition, African Democratic Congress, has called for a comprehensive audit of Nigeria's refineries ahead of any planned sale. In a statement by its interim national spokesman, Bolaji Abdullahi, ADC questioned if President Bola Tinubu's administration misled Nigerians after spending more than 2.8 billion naira on the refineries that it later declared non-functional. In March 2021, the Federal Executive Council, presided over by the late President Muhammadu Buhari, approved the sum of $1.5 billion for the rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery in Rivers State. Now, I think this goes without question. Anyone who's going to, caveat emptor, anyone who's going to invest in this needs to know what it comes with, needs to know what's going to go into rehabilitating, or even just rejigging the entire refinery to see what else can come out of it. So I think that's just expected. As to the amount of money that has gone into this refinery in hopes of bringing it back to life, while I don't completely agree with the ADC's intentions for mentioning or highlighting this, but I definitely think it's worth being investigated. What has that money gone into? Who were the contractors? Who were the people that were contracted to put together or to rehabilitate this refinery at every point in time? over the past couple of years that money has been invested in these refineries? Who are the leaders of this refinery? Are they being questioned? What are they being asked? I think that goes without a question to say, if Nigerians are going to have any form of trust as it pertains to our energy sector, we have a new leadership in NNPCL, and it's coming with so much promise, so much hope for our future, our energy future in Nigeria. Most recently, a report, or I would even call it a statement by the OPEC Director General said, he talked about how much money is required within the energy sector for us to actually meet the barrels of oil per day we need to within the global energy sector. And it ran into trillions of dollars. And he made a very, very specific point, pointing out what Africa, Nigeria, the role we have to play in improving our energy infrastructure if we're going to improve our barrels of oil per day. So this is such an important issue at stake, and it only makes sense that we understand what has been done with previous investments, because this is real money. This is real money that could have gone into aging infrastructure, dilapidated infrastructure, acquiring new infrastructure, if we're truly going to get to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope agenda plans for the energy sector. That being said, I think ADC is doing a great job in speaking the heart of the people at this time, which we're saying, is this politics or is this genuine care? The truth is, at this point in time, like Nigerians said last weekend, we want our votes to count. Whoever we decide to vote for, it's not by what you say now. It's not by how much you tell us, oh, you need to do, we've been saying it ever since. The point is, we're looking into legacy. And that's one of the major conversations we've had today. We're looking into your legacy. We're looking into your history. We're looking into what you said before you became a member of the coalition. We're looking into what you did before you became a member of this coalition with the little power that you had. So yes, this is definitely something that needs to be done. But, you know, ADC definitely has a lot more work to put together as opposed to just highlighting the obvious.
All right, Kachi. Thanks for the sermon.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, was it a sermon? Was it that long?
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I don't understand.
I think that EDC should take things easy. One step at a time. They need not jump the gun, and they need not politicize, the issue of our refineries. Bolaji Abdullahi, who is speaking for ADC, was a federal minister under a PDP government, and that questions can be asked that if you had done the needful, maybe the Buhari and the Tinubu administration will not have, saw the need to invest what they invested, the huge amount of money that you are now asking that it should be audited before NNPC will, before the refineries, will be sold. I think that that question will be legitimate the same way that yours is legitimate now. But having said that, of course, I get the point of the ADC. It's a political season, and it aligns with the questions that we too have been asking on this very table, about the abysmal failure of the past management of NNPC regarding the workability of those refineries and all the lies, all the lies, all the shenanigans that they did. Yes, under Obasanjo, at the twilight of his administration, he did put up those refineries for sale. Yaradua reversed, same party, reversed the sale of it. Jonathan didn't do so much about those refineries until Buhari said, okay, let's try and fix them. It is obvious now that we've been lied to and that things are not what they claim they are. So an audit will be necessary, but then there's a new sheriff in town as far as an NPC is concerned, Awujale. Let him go through the books, let him dust what needs to be dusted and come up with the precise position of what is happening with our refineries. But of course, we see from what Obasanjo has said that they will never work. From what Dangote has recently said to say, don't waste your time and more money. It's not going to work. And then Awujale is saying that it looks like
it's not going to work. We
may have to reconsider. And it's important that in reconsidering, just like Achi said, don't let us just move on without finding out what actually happened. Contracts were genuinely signed for the 4 refineries. Completion dates were agreed on.
Yes.
So what has happened to the money that we have disbursed? Why did the contractors, the Italian firm, fail to deliver on what they promised? What is the fault from the part of the NNPC that we can't, if Dangote is saying that it is 33 million liters of petrol that we consume a day, not 70 that we used to hear, or even 50, that's a point NNPC claim. What is the percentage of that 33 million liters that the refineries in Port Harcourt and Warri that you are claiming were working and you were flaring gas contributed to those, things? Those are important.
Those are very important
information that we need to know before you say, let us move on, let's sell. Who will buy?
You know what I was going to say? Remember the first time we spoke about NNPC shake-up and we brought the newspapers here and I said, I hope someone's going to jail. I want to see people in handcuffs. I need to see people being docked. No, we can't have these conversations and have these investigations, and at the end of the day, no one is held responsible. When you have bad actions, you must have consequences. When you have fiscal mismanagement to this degree, we borrowed money to fix our refineries, and the refineries are not fixed. Somebody must be held responsible. If it's criminal mismanagement, then let them be held responsible. And another thing that's very interesting here is that we did see a private jet full of journalists, being flown to refineries to go check them out.
Claiming that things were
claiming that things were all fine and dandy. And the first thing I was going to ask is, if somebody put me on a jet and said, go check out the refinery, I say, sir, I'm not an engineer. How am I going to know if what I'm seeing is smoke, if what I'm seeing is gas flaring? You don't have that. If you do not have subject matter expertise, then you should not allow yourself be used to mislead the Nigerian people, particularly when we're talking about billions of dollars in a country that is bootstrapped. In a country that's trying its hardest to move forward. I understand what the ADC is doing here. They're going to politic as they're going to politic, and it seems like we're all just going to dance this tune until election day comes. However, it is also very important that this NNPC shakeup, because even the head of the EFCC came to the House of Reps just 2 weeks ago, and he said that the corruption in the oil and gas sector is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Like, I can't even understand what's going on. He said, no. He said you go to Iceland. You go to Iceland and you see Nigerian owning assets there. You go and you see this and this, and I'm like, oh, this is all fine and dandy, but unless we see people being docked, unless we see money being returned, unless we see actual consequences for these actions, then all of us are just chit-chatting for the sake of it. All of us, including the ADC.
It's even going to bringing other sectors as well, because then you have to now take it to the EFCC as well. So it's so much, when you think about the scale of corruption and everybody involved in it, it's so many different people, it's so many different questions that require answers as to whether or not we're going to get this, because this issue goes back decades. There are people who are not even on the face of it anymore, who were instrumental to causing these issues. That remains to be seen. We just need progress at the end of the day.
Stop asking questions. But at least
something you guarantee people, about.
Yes, but at least, because you did bring up our barrels per day, we met our OPEC quota for the first time in 5 months. That's good news there. That's good news there. Well, that's all we have for you on the week that was.